am going to call the December 15th meeting of California Community Power to order. And I'll ask our General Counsel, Brittany, to, to verify the meeting quorum. But before we do that, Nick Zanato, could you move Lori Mitchell into the panelists side, please?
She should be moved.
She is. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, and with that, I can verify that there is a quorum present.
Thank you very much.
Just joined.
And Jan Pepper, hi Jan. So we have 9 members of the board here. So they have on item number 3 on the agenda, there have been no matters subsequent to posting the agenda. So we'll move on to item 4, which is public comment. Any member of the public may address the board concerning matters not on the agenda. If there are any, would you please raise your hand? Virtual hand. Give it a second. Not seeing any raised hands, I'll bring it back to item number 5, the consent calendar, consent agenda. And we have 2 items there, 5A and 5B. Any members of the board want to remove an item? And if you don't have that, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll move consent calendar.
A second.
All right, that would be Valley Clean Energy and Peninsula Clean Energy. The motion and the second. Any discussion? Please raise your hand. Not seeing any raised hands. Let's take this to vote. Brittany?
Can we ask for a public comment?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Any public comment on the consent calendar? Please raise your virtual hand. Not seeing that. Let's come back to the board and Brittany.
Okay, for the consent agenda, Central Coast Community Energy,
Yes.
Clean Power San Francisco,
Yes.
East Bay Community Energy, I believe is absent. Marin Clean Energy,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes.
and Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
Okay, the consent agenda passes.
This is Nick Schass with East Bay Community Energy, and I just signed up.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Welcome. All right, we're now going to move to item 6, and we'll move to item 6A, the general manager's report. Tim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, board members. Chris, could you go to the slide deck, please? Thank you very much. And then if you would, go to the first slide in the report. Yes, thank you. What I wanted to, I've got a couple of slides here to overview what we have in front of us with regard to the long duration storage projects, as well as then the firm clean resources. The timelines that I'll show you are you're familiar with. You've seen these in several past discussions. This is obviously the Tumbleweed timeline. The notice to consider occurred in October. What we're currently targeting is the board will approve the Tumbleweed agreements at its January 19th meeting. That will require that we have the final agreements, and they will be distributed to you on January 14th. Following the board action. What we're anticipating is that there will be the participating CCAs will go into their approval process for the contracts that they'll enter into, and we're anticipating that will continue on through April, and at that point we would have executed agreements. The COD for this project is June 2026, and so that's the schedule that we have in front of us for these next 4 to 6 months. We intend to follow a similar process for additional long duration storage projects that will be considered by the board. Chris, would you go to the next slide, please? This represents the timeline associated with the Fern Clean Resources project. The RFO was issued in October 13th. I'm sorry, on this past Monday, December 13th, we've received bids in response to the RFO. San Jose Clean Energy and Sonoma Clean Power are the acting as lead agencies in the evaluation and contract negotiation phase. The POC is in place to be able to support the next steps in the development of the contracts. And what we're anticipating is that the contract would be executed in July. We've made some modifications to how it is that we're going to go through the contracting phase of the Fern Clean Resources. I'm prepared to get into that in greater detail during the discussion about the budget. But what I would like to ask right now is if anyone has any questions with regard to the 2 updates that I've provided on the projects. I'll take those now before we get into the discussion about the budget.
Jan, please go ahead.
Thank you. So if we can go back to the slide for the LDS projects. Okay, so what I think I heard you say is that the agreements are going to be finalized and that the final agreements would be available to us on January 14th. And then we would be asked to vote on those at the CC Power board meeting on January 19th. As far as CC Power's participation, did I get that correct?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay, that's going to cause, that timing is going to cause a problem for me. I need to go to my board first to get approval on how I will vote as the PCE board member at CC Power. And we will have to call a special meeting of our board of directors and getting the agreements on January 14th, and then expecting my board members to be able to have time to look at those, and for me to have time to look at those and have a recommendation and have a meeting and a vote in that 5-day period, which I think includes a weekend, is not going to be workable for me. I don't know if others have similar constraints on that.
What's your regularly scheduled board meeting?
Our meeting is the 4th Thursday of the month. So in January, that's going to be on January 27th. Yeah, so essentially by putting it out on the 14th, the 15th and 16th is a weekend. So 17th, I mean, yeah, that's not going to work for me.
Can I suggest something, guys?
Yeah,
This is Tom.
Go ahead, Tom.
I think usually these things work to have CC Power approve it pending approval of the governing boards of all the participating members. So I think the board could approve it, but there would be a caveat basically saying that everybody has to eventually run it by the governing boards in their due time. And when they all do, then the project is now approved by everybody and it could go back to the counterparty to approve it. That may be the process to follow.
Thank you, Tom. Just as a clarification, that is what we are planning on doing. I think the issue that Jan is bringing up is before she can vote as a CC Power director, she needs to get the okay for her vote as a CC Power director, and then she'll take it back for additional approvals.
Even if there's a caveat there, Jan, that says your board has to approve it first before it becomes final.
Well, I can talk to my board about it, but that was the direction I was given when CC Power was formed. And I don't think they'll appreciate my not following their direction. So, I mean, I understand the need to get it moving, but if we can get the agreements before January 14th, if we can get them like on January 3rd, so that I have a little bit of time, that would be helpful. But just, getting them 5 days ahead of time is not going to be enough time for us to really look at them.
So, thank you, Jan. Next up is Barbara Hale, followed by Nick Chassett.
Thank you. Thank you. I guess it would be helpful to me to understand, Tim, what you are thinking you're going to be asking us to vote on, in particular in the resolution language, because I think the way I've been thinking about it, and of course, each of our situations are distinct, right? Because we have distinct governing boards, but the way I've been thinking about it is a vote at the CC Power level, like Tom described, that says it's dependent on our governing board's approvals, is basically would basically be me agreeing to recommend that my governing board execute the agreement. And if I say yes to that, then that allows them to use their authority, to exercise their authority as my governing board. If I say no to that, then I've taken that opportunity away from them. So that's kind of how I've been thinking about votes at CC Power that need to go to my governing board. So language that maybe indicates that CC Power recommends execution by its participating members would be helpful. And I don't know if that helps Jan, but I think it helps me.
May I jump in and perhaps provide some clarification? So the way the several documents are interact with each other, not several, a few, they're all mutually dependent. So none of them are effective unless all are executed. So when CC Power Board votes to approve the project participation sale agreement and the ESSA, it will be doing so to effectuate CC Power, whom is a party to those agreements, approval for the purposes of being a party to those agreements. But they don't go into effect and don't bind CC Power until the developer and the project participants all execute. It's not until we have the final execution that they're legally binding documents. So I don't know if that helps for clarification. I think it's correct that the issue Jan is raising is different. And I'd like to think about how we might be able to ameliorate that or solve it. But I just want to make sure everyone has a clear understanding of what we'd be asking this board to do.
Thank you, Tony. Tim, Jan had maybe, before we go to Nick Chassett, in terms of timing, do you think we could get the contracts in by January 3rd or 4th?
I don't think so. I know that we're close with some, but not all. And so I'm not comfortable being able to commit on an accelerated timeline.
Okay, that sounds good. Before we go to Nick, I think we've got this input. There'll be some offline follow-up in terms of timeline. I think we have a couple of pathways forward that we can get back to the board with. Tony, were you going to add anything to this?
Yeah, I think it'd be good to take it offline so I can understand the procedural need that PCE has, and we can figure out what we will already have ready, what they actually need, and how it fits with their meeting schedule.
Perfect. I think, yeah, let's take that offline where you can talk to Jan. Next up is Nick Chassett.
Yeah, I think Barbara asked most of the question I was trying to clarify. But I guess, okay, this is for Tumbleweed. As a non-participant in the project, do I even have a role to vote though?
Yeah. I'm going to shift this over to Tony to answer that question.
Yes. So the way that joint powers agreement is drafted, agreements that bind CC Power, and since CC Power is a party to this agreement, it is envisioned that there would be that approach. It is something that we've thought about whether or not there would be alternative ways to doing this, but that's our current intent moving forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, Nick, there may be a little bit more to come your way on this from the general counsel to the board, because this will be the first contract that we're signing. And there are aspects of the project participation agreement that, whether it makes sense for the entire board, including non-participants, to sign. So good question. We will bring that back to the board. Okay, so go ahead. Are there any other questions on item 6A1, which is an update on LDS projects? No. Let me just ask our general counsel. I see that there's a hand raised from the public. Should we take public comment for item 6A as a whole, or do we kind of take comments on each item here?
Yeah, typically because we do have some resolutions involved, we could do it by each item, but it is up to you.
Okay.
Take it.
Yeah, for this meeting, when I think it may be timely to take a public comment right now. So Bill Knack, you're up.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just have a quick question on process. Say, for example, you have some kind of vote on the 19th of January, and Jan brings it back to her board, and they have, generally they are in support of the resolution, but they have a problem with a particular part of it, and for them to sign on, something needs to be amended for that part. How does that work? How for them?
Is that the end of your public comment?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment? Okay, not seeing any, we'll bring it back. So typically we don't have engaged in dialogue on public comment. This has been addressed before. Essentially, the contract is as is, and if a board doesn't, they're just going to have to vote for it at that point, because there's been what 6 months worth of discussion at the Project Oversight Committee on the essence of the agreement. All right, so we will move to item 6A2, which is Resolution 21-12-2.
Thank you. Chris, could you move to the budget, first slide in the budget deck? Sorry, just trying to catch up with you. The budget that you have to consider today is the product of the interaction that I've had with the board's budget ad hoc committee. This has been led up by board member Mitchell. Participants to the committee include board members Weiss, Balachandran, Marshall, and Habashi. What I wanted to do is discuss the lessons that we've learned from 2021. They've helped us be able to develop the budget recommendation that you're going to then consider. And then what I'll do is I'll close with a discussion about the allocation of the budget costs to the to the membership. So if you'd go to the next slide, Chris. When we unpacked the contracting process that we had in 2021, what we uncovered were the inefficiencies that are leading to higher costs and delays. And what we've done is built into the budget resolution of those. The current structure that we have for negotiating contracts is that we have a project oversight committee. It advises the negotiating team, and but in practice, what I see is that it renders us to negotiating contracts by committee, and you can imagine the difficulty in being able to be timely, to avoid not going back and revisiting decisions that have been made, prioritizing items that need to be negotiated. And so that goes in part to the first bullet item that we have here, and that is accountability. What we need is to be able to have a single negotiator. The relying on the current structure right now really doesn't give us that ability to be able to have the party that's responsible to make decisions and to move the process forward. And so what we're looking to do is to address that with the revised contracting structure that we're including in the budget. The second bullet item recognizes that the POC is precisely where it is that we have the expertise and capability to be able to do these negotiations. However, what we have is a structure where your procurement managers are in effect negotiating by committee. And what's happening is that we're not highlighting the strengths of the individuals in this process. And so if we are able to transform the POC, put it more in a support role of the negotiations, what we'll be able to do, I think, is retain the expertise that's necessary to properly place them in order to be able to support the negotiations. In the third budgeted item, this perhaps is an item that is a personal preference. And if we relied on the general manager to, basically lead the negotiations, I would encourage that what we do is we develop, greater definition with regard to the roles and processes that we have. Right now, what we're looking at is that we have the board, we have the negotiating team, we have the project oversight committee, we have the general counsel, we have risk oversight committees, and we have the general manager. And what's happening is that we need to be able to have clarity on the roles and processes. And again, I would admit that this is perhaps something that is of personal preference. If I were leading the effort, I would encourage this to be a part of the process that we use going forward. The fourth item, inarguably, is something that I think that we can improve on, and that is that we need to be able to have better communications. We want to be able to make sure that the project participants are receiving the regular reports, that they understand the emerging issues, and they have the opportunity to be able to engage in informed ways. These lessons learned are what I've discussed. If you go to the next slide, please, Chris. These lessons learned are what it is that I've discussed with the ad hoc committee. When I first began the conversations with the committee, where I was going is that I thought the having a strong general manager would be the means by which you would implement the lessons learned. But I think that what we found as we first began to socialize the proposed budget is that that what it led to is significantly higher costs, and that is hard to justify with CC Power not having delivered a project to this point. But furthermore, when you look beyond the firm clean resources, the question becomes what would be next. And so the difficulty in being able to answer those questions has caused us to pivot in the development of the budget. We, I think, now have a much more sustainable approach that allows us to be able to incorporate those lessons learned that I'd reviewed. And with this, what will happen is that we turn to the sweat equity that that we can rely on in order to be able to move us through the evaluation and the negotiation phases led by San Jose Clean Energy with the support of Jeff and his team in order to be able to make sure that we've got the accountability, that what we've done is we've streamlined the process and we continue to engage the membership in a way to be able to make sure that they're informed and in a position to be able to provide input into the negotiation process. So that's the basic structure that we've developed in order to be able to put together the project portion of the budget that you see in this slide. And so what I can do is I can walk through both portions of the budget in order to be able to give a little bit more detail to what it is that we're currently thinking. I'll stay with the project because that's where I began. What you see is that the project portion of the budget is $244,280. And it's broken into these several categories. I think the significant savings that you'll see associated with this is in the case of the negotiating team. In the past, what we'd experienced is that we relied extensively on the negotiators in order to be able to turn back to the public, the Project Oversight Committee, and to be able to help them manage their way through decisions that were necessary. And what we had seen is much more costs that were associated with our negotiating team by asking them to take on that type of responsibility. And also what I saw is that it bogged the negotiating team down as a result of needing to be able to arrive at consensus or near consensus on many of the issues that came forward. And so by taking this approach, what we're doing is repositioning the negotiating team to look at the negotiations and make sure that we're proceeding effectively through that. Significant savings are associated also with the reduction in the amount of time that the general manager is going to be spending in order to be able to support the interface between the negotiating team and the POC. And so what will happen in this case is that we're looking, the numbers that you don't see here are the work that will be being done by Jean Zalay and Deb Emser in their lead role in negotiations, as well as then being able to bring the POC along. And so these are the areas where the modified approach that we're taking is going to be, in addition to applying the lessons learned, I think lead to a reduced cost and a streamlined process. Stepping up to the general budget, what we see is that there's a modest increase over 2021 for both the general manager and the general counsel. But what we had seen as we looked at what it takes in order to be able to manage the day-to-day operations of the organization, we were vastly under budgeting for the general manager. Certainly the same can be said with regard to the general counsel, who has responsibilities to be able to make sure that we're in compliance with the public agency requirements, the ability to be able to support general legal issues, but perhaps even something that's easy, I think, to overlook is that the organization doesn't have staff. And so what's happening is that we're relying extensively on the general counsel staff in order to be able to just conduct this meeting today. And so those are costs that are folded in to the general counsel's portion of the budget. The final item on the general budget is associated with outside accountancy support in order to be able to make sure that we're managing our books properly. This is the structure that I've come to with the interaction with the ad hoc committee, and it's how it is that we intend to be able to apply the lessons learned from 2021 and use that in order to be able to streamline the process, move clean resources forward, and to be able to do so without sacrificing expertise, but being able to reduce the costs significantly. Chris, if you would go to the next slide. This is what it means to each of the individual participating members. And so the budget gets broken or gets allocated based on the general costs going to being shared equally amongst the participating against the membership. And then those members who participate in the firm clean resources and the LDS projects will receive their proportionate share of these costs. And this is how it gets broken down by member agency. Mr. Chair, this is what I was prepared to discuss. We can take questions before we go to the resolution. Whatever your preference is, I'm available.
Yeah, let's just go to the previous slide, Chris, and I'll just start with a few comments. And then we have Tom Habashi's hand up too. So summarizing a little bit of what you said here, this is for the entire board. This budget is lower than the current budget we have. So the current budget is about 630 or so. So this is coming at about 30% or so less than that. I think we all recognize that there's a ton of lessons learned here. And we're really looking forward to getting the long duration storage projects closed. And as we discussed earlier, we are very close to getting the first contract in. I also wanted to, in advance, thank the budget committee led by Laurie Mitchell, who basically changed the course of this proposed 2022 budget from having a full-time general manager to basically focusing it, especially the FCR project, to be close to 100% sweat equity, and the general manager's input on that or involvement will be minimal. It's going to be sweat equity led by Laurie and Jeff, and we have some of the transaction counsel here. So that's another way of keeping our costs down. One thing I'd like us to consider as we move forward at some point in the resolution is to continue with the budget committee. I think the budget committee's involvement has really added to a lot of engagement. So I'd like to continue with that budget committee. And secondly, let's treat this budget as more of a cap and really focus on how we can get our costs in under this budget. So, the day-to-day, the week-to-week kind of management, there's going to be a lot more sweat equity. And so the way in which we manage the projects going forward, we would want to have some changes as Tim outlined. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tom, Jeff, and then Jan in that order. So Tom, please.
Yeah, just to two comments. One is, given the new direction of making sure that the general manager is focusing a lot more on projects than on general stuff, which we've done quite a bit of in last year. It seems that the allocation of expense here is going twice to the general and two portions to the general and one portion to the projects. I think it seems a little skewed to me. I think there should be more money for the general manager in the projects than in the general category. So that's first comment. Second comment, the three tables that I've seen don't show the breakdown of the allocation between the FCR as well as and the current project, at least how the costs are being allocated, because as you probably know, some of us are in one but not in the other, and I'd like to see that that table, and if it's available, Tim. I know that I've asked you about it before and you shared it with me, but I think you should share it with everybody so everybody will understand their share of the allocation, especially the one associated with the projects.
Okay,
Can I respond to that?
please.
Maybe I misunderstand your question, Tom. I thought that what you were looking for is on the next slide, which is the allocation of the budget from general, firm, clean resources and long duration storage.
That one. Yeah, I have not seen this one. This, I think, unless you flashed it before now and I wasn't looking.
Oh,
You
I'm
did have
sorry.
it. You did have this up, Tom. So,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
All right. Next is Jeff, followed by Jan.
Thank you. Yeah, I think as we're thinking about how to reboot CC Power and kind of build on our startup lessons, I think this kind of budget's okay. I also think I'm thinking of this as a budget that we may want to go less than a year before we revisit it. And the reason is, I think what we're trying to do with the amount of expenditures here is act like we're a mature organization and a steady run rate, and we've got everything sorted out. And that's not what the case is here. We're still starting up. I think there's a lot to learn. And I think had LDS gone smoothly and quickly, and we saw the financial value of it, we would have already been looking, I think, to have a full-time general manager who is a procurement director and a full-time senior admin assistant. And we would have seen the value would have been proven. And so what I want us to think about too is going from this, which I think is a budget that doesn't necessarily get us to a different kind of organization, but with the sweat equity proposal, which I support, can get us to some concluded projects, which I think is a morale building exercise that we need to do. I would like to get out the other side of those two projects and then come back to this, because I think if we can prove the value here, I think this organization needs full-time staff. And I think that means a budget that's close to double this. So, but I get that we need to prove this first. So those are my comments.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Tim, if you have a response.
Yeah, one of the things that I haven't done the numbers on this, Jeff, but my sense is that we're front-end loaded on this budget with activities in the, thanks for going back to that slide, Chris. We're front-end loaded. And so the majority of the costs that we have are associated with the first 6 months of activities. It's finalizing the long duration storage and the Firm Clean Resources. I think after that, what happens is that the budget assumes we're in a contract administration role, which involves minimal engagement from the GM, no engagement from the negotiating team, and similarly minimal engagement from Braun Blazing project support.
So I get that's what this budget reflects. I'm suggesting that the value of CC Power to me is in continuing to engage in further procurement, not just contract management. And so I think that may be true for many of us in the long run. And so I'm not criticizing this current budget. I think it's the right way to go today because we haven't proven our project completions yet. I also just am flagging that in 6 months or less, I'd like to come back and say, let's take a fresh look at this before a whole year goes by. That's all.
I misunderstood.
Thank you, Jeff. I like that. I think that's in line with this overall thinking of like, let's continue with the budget committee and target the burn rate to be, lower than what we have here, and then come back to it. And your thought about 6 months sounds good. So next up is Jan Pepper, followed by Laurie Mitchell.
Thanks, Girish, and thank you to the budget committee for putting all the work and effort into this. I just had some comments about kind of the way things have been described here as to how projects would be handled going forward, and just wanted to get those out there. I think it makes a lot of sense for the actual CCAs in a project to be fully engaged in the negotiations. So I support that because that's what we all do now for projects that we individually contract for. And then having those lead agencies get input from the POC on the specific needs of all of the CCAs that are participating in a project makes sense. I'm a little puzzled by the project-based ad hoc committee of the board. I don't think that's necessary, or I guess my concern is that since it would be a Brown Act body of the organizations that are participating in a project, it would have to be limited to a minority of the participating project participants, and the lead agencies would clearly need to be one or two of, whoever the lead agencies would need to be on that ad hoc committee. So that would allow maybe 2 other CCAs to be on it, and then the other CCAs don't have their voices heard. So I see a problem with that, and I prefer that we not do that, and that we just have the input come from the POC to the GM and the negotiating team. Couple other things in the budget. The budget says that this, where did I see it? I guess it's in the resolution, or where is it? Budget assumptions in the packet. It says 6 board meetings, and a further item on our agenda today is to approve the schedule for 12 board meetings. So that seems to be a little inconsistent. And then I am glad to see that we're looking for cash calls for the entire year rather than just for a partial year. I think that was a lesson learned from last year, that we need to go ahead and fund the organization for the entire year. So I support that. And I'll have to kind of think through the comments that Jeff made. I know there have been conversations about having a full-time GM and full-time support, and this is kind of going the opposite direction. So I guess we'll see how it works, but I support, probably coming back and revisiting this to see how it's going once we get these projects over the finish line.
Thank you, Jan. Before we go to Laurie, the budget has 6 meetings. We're creating 12 meetings so that we can calendar it, but the idea is we'll cancel 6 of them.
So if I might chime in here, share just provide a little more detail on that. So we have to have a meeting schedule. Of course, we could schedule 6, but we have thought it was prudent just to calendar it out and then provide the secretary of the organization the discretion, obviously exercised in consultation with the chair, to adjourn certain meetings. So we'll have them on the calendar, but we are budgeting. We're budgeting for 6.
Lori, you're up next.
Thank you. And, first of all, I just want to thank all of the members of the budget committee. A lot of work went into this and a lot of input. And so really appreciate that. And I'm supportive of this. I think it's a good path forward to make sure that we can finalize the 2 projects that are currently under consideration, both the long duration storage and the firm clean resources, and control costs, and very open to seeing where this organization goes in the future. But I think for right now, in terms of what I heard on the budget committee, a strong desire to lower costs. So I think this proposal accomplishes that. So I'll be supporting it, but happy to continue with the budget meeting. I agree there's more work that needs to be done on this. I also wanted to say, in terms of roles and responsibilities and in terms of the new approach, for the firm clean resources, we will be working with Sonoma to draft a quick project charter, which will define roles and responsibilities and who's doing what and at what stages we'll get input. So look for that in the beginning of the year. I'm sure we'll learn a lot taking this approach to it as well. But again, very supportive of this, and I will motion to approve.
Okay, thank you, Lori. We do have a motion on the table, but we also have a hand up. Barbara Hale. So Barbara, do you want to go while people are considering seconding that motion?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm supportive of the direction this is going. I want to say thank you to the committee for the work you've done. I know when you are voluntold to participate in these exercises, it can be challenging. This was kind of a big one, so thank you for that workload. I do really want to amplify the managing costs part of the comments I'm hearing. I do think that's very important. I think the communication that has been talked about is also important, and I'm looking forward to the stronger engagement by CCA staff leads, resulting in presentations potentially from those staff leads at our board meetings to keep us informed. I respect the important role that the POC plays, but I think that's also going to be an important part of making sure that we kind of, as a community, stay together and stay informed. And Lori, your mention of a project charter, I think would also be super helpful. So we're all clear on the roles and responsibilities of each of the different moving parts. Greater reliance on each other to achieve successful projects is going to mean that those kinds of communications and those understandings of the different roles and responsibilities are going to be just all the more important. So thank you for all of that. I'd like to, with that statement, second the motion.
Thank you, Barbara. So we have a motion and a second with, I think, several sentiments that have been expressed to put any action we take on this budget in context. So thank you all for those comments. So let me ask if there are any additional comments from the board before we go to public comment and ask for that. Looking for hands. I don't. I'll come back to the board for further discussion. So I'll now go for public comment, ask if there's any public comment on this resolution. Okay, not seeing any raised hands. I'll come back to the board and ask if there's further discussion on the motion on the table. Not seeing any. Brittany, could we go to vote, please?
So for resolution 21-1202, approval of the 2022 budget and cash calls, Central Coast Community Energy,
Yes.
Clean Power San Francisco,
Yes.
East Bay Community Energy,
Yes.
Marin Clean Energy,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes.
and Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution passes.
Thank you, board members. We'll now move to item 6A3, resolution 21-1203. And that would be Tim.
I can introduce this, Tim, if that
Okay,
would be
sorry.
helpful. So at the beginning of the year, the board approved several consulting contracts to help support just the overall function of the JPA, as well as some consulting and negotiation services for the projects. All of those contracts are set to expire December 31st of this year. So this resolution would give authority to the general manager to just extend those contracts. The substance of the contracts would remain the same. And if it is helpful, I can go through all of the consultants and their services. But if not, they are all laid out in the resolution. And I did include the dates that they were approved. These contracts all are included in previous packets. So if there are no questions from me, I'll hand it back to the chair to facilitate board discussion.
Thank you, Brittany. Any questions from the board for Brittany on this item? Please raise your hands. Your hand. Okay, no questions so far. So I'll go to public comment. Please raise your hand if you have a public comment. Not seeing any comment. I'll bring it back to the board and entertain a motion for resolution 21-12-3.
This is Sonoma. I would move the item.
Thank you. Sonoma moves.
I'll second.
And that would be RCA, Matthew, second. Any further discussion? Right, Brittany, could we take this to vote, please?
For resolution 21-1203, Central Coast Community Energy,
Yes.
Clean Power San Francisco,
Yes.
East Bay Community Energy,
Yes, sorry.
Marin Clean Energy,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes.
and Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution passes.
Thank you very much. All right, so we are now at item 7, discussion of any individual member items.
I believe we had one last resolution setting
Oh,
the.
sorry, too much in a hurry. 6B, resolution 21-12-4, setting regular meeting date. So we can bring that up. As we indicated prior, Tony explained how we're dealing with this. So I doubt this requires more explanation. Be happy to take, well, let's see, are there any questions? Not seeing any. Entertain a motion for approval followed by a second, please.
I'll move it. Sonoma moves.
I'll
Sonoma
second.
moves.
I'll second, Grish.
All right, Glory San Jose seconds. Move to public comment. Anyone from the public would like to speak to this item? Not seeing any raised hands, bring it back. And not seeing any raised hands for further discussion. Brittany, could you please take this to vote?
For resolution 211204, Central Coast Community Energy,
Yes.
Clean Power San Francisco,
Yes.
East Bay Community Energy,
Yes.
Marin Clean Energy,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes.
and Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution passes.
Thank you, Brittany. And now we'll move to item 7, discussion of any individual member items. Please raise your hand. Okay, not seeing any. Before adjournment, I'll just say I am really looking forward to our 2022 reboot. Looking forward to a more healthy 2022 and wish all of you a great holiday season and Christmas. And we'll see you on January 19th. So have a safe holiday.
Happy
And
New Year.
yeah,
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Holidays.
Meeting's adjourned at 2:03. We can stop the recording too.